I think I was probably 19 or 20 years old, and I experienced that, you coming into Indy. And for me, the hot rod memory of what made you want to do this, what made me want to do this, it's that. Was seeing you come in, the way you presented yourself, the cars you built, and that you sold me on how bad this industry was. And that hung with me forever. It wasn't the California guys.
You judge a car by not who built it or not who owns it.
Right.
Whether you like the builder, you don't like the builder, you like the owner, you don't like the builder, that has nothing to do with the car itself.
Welcome back. Another episode of Oil and Whiskey. This time, I don't know if you can tell.
New scenery.
We didn't do a new studio. This is a remote episode.
So not in Mundelein.
This is not in Mundelein. This is not at the Roadster Shop. This is actually at Jesse Greening Auto Company, his Ethos Craft Brewing and Winery restaurant in front of his shop in Cullman, Alabama. That was a lot.
That was a lot.
It was a lot.
And yet, all that, and somehow John Jackson's house is in the background.
Yes.
I'm trying to think. You can see it. I don't know if the cameras can pick it up.
Yeah, John Jackson doesn't miss a place to park his house. He's parked his house at your house a few times, hasn't he?
Many a time, yes.
This is an episode we've obviously been waiting for a long time. I don't know. Everybody gives you shit about.
You think?
Yeah, a lot of things. I mean, we'll get into that. Don't worry. But I mean, about being old and about being in the sticks. Surely to God, there's an airport somewhere, but we could not get you.
You got
up
to get the cattle off of it before you can land. That was the whole deal.
Is that what it is?
We have not been able to get him to come up in studio, and this one worked out great. And we're going to have a great weekend of a lot of great guests, but this one we wanted to do first, and it is special. I know we're gonna bust each other's balls, but this one's a special.
It's been the white whale. We've been chasing you, Bobby, for like 3 years now, and we had to come all the way out here to
I think it's
Alabama
probably
to
a
get
black,
you.
it's a black whale.
Me and my
Bobby's
wife
here.
dated for 14 years, so you did better than me and her did.
Bobby, he plays hard to get.
Yeah,
he plays hard
tough
to
to pin down, but
seriously, business. I'm glad you were able to do
Well,
it.
thank
We've been
you.
something
Thank
we've
you
been
so
talking
much.
about for a while.
It wasn't that I just don't do this a whole lot. So
Yeah, I know, but this one's a special one.
it is.
There's very few people in. I'm gonna go ahead and just get the niceties out of the way, right, and the compliments, because then we can be.
you're going to front load it a little bit?
Yeah, we're gonna
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and be nice up front, and then I can just be my normal self the rest of the time. There's very few people in this industry that I can credit for personally to where I'm at today.
I'm so sorry.
And I don't have a lot of friends. I
Not
mean,
a great
that's fine.
industry, I think.
But
So he's talking about me.
You
I think he's
boys
talking about me. This is where he talks about me, and then he shifts to the guest.
serious business. The weirdest part of it is the three at the top are sitting right here, and I remember we've talked about this. I remember it vividly. What I learned from you at Shades of the Past when we brought that Chevelle out, and I learned more about business, life, presentation, and showmanship than I even did about cars and car building and stuff like that. And the way you carry yourself, and to be so early on in our career and my career, for you to tell me the things that you told me straight up, not pulling any punches, and getting to see a little bit behind the curtain of like, yeah, it might be a good car, but the show has to put on a show too. So the cars that they pick at the show also have to be a certain level, right? And there was a lot. It changed my path.
Well, you really don't want to. You don't want a yes person. You really don't. If you're going to try to, and when you were young, I remember when y'all came and
I'm still kind of young. I'm still pretty young.
Yeah. Troy is too. Yeah. But Troy, he's a real good friend of mine, and he had an accident. Whether y'all know it or not, he fell off.
We just heard about that.
He had surgery today.
How's he doing?
I think it's going to go further. He's going to have another surgery tomorrow. So we need to keep him in our prayers, because it was really bad. He's compound fracture in his wrist, and he broke his kneecap, the way I understand it. But anyway, he's anyway. Sorry I brought that up, but it was on my mind. But when you all came to the Shades, that's been years ago. But you had a good car. It was a really, really good car. Had a little issue.
You just knew that it didn't have no water in it.
Well,
we're talking about the Chevelle.
Talking about the Chevelle. Yeah. It didn't have a lick of water in it.
When I was growing up in this,
It didn't. That's the only reason it didn't leak, because it didn't have no water.
You wanted try to people to help you. Of course, I was young, and I was fortunate enough to meet Pete Shapors and Jim Jacobs and Jim Hewing years ago, back in the 70s, before you were born probably. And
Josh was born then. I wasn't.
and they were they asked. I had a 33 coupe, a blown 33 coupe, and they thanked me for using their product, and that was just. It set it for me. I mean, I seen them on TV. Hello, I'm from Tennessee, and I seen these guys in magazines and all of that stuff, and it really did help me, and I try to use that, and anytime I wanted to ask something, Pete would help me. So I think we all need to do the same thing with some of the younger builders coming up. And you were young at the time, and I'm sorry if I got you into this or helped you or whatever, but you asked a question, and you need to tell the people the truth about it instead of saying, oh, it's great, it's great. Well, if it ain't great, it ain't great. Simple as that. Doesn't help you. But y'all did really good. You really did. You've come a long ways.
What you said of thinking of using the products the same. I mean, that's exactly why we even know each other today.
Yeah.
Is walking up to the same
And
exact
the same car.
The same exact car,
Same
walking
car.
up at SEMA.
Yep.
Man, because it had their chassis under it. And
Well, it makes a difference. And what did that cost you guys? Nothing. Just tell him thank you.
well, in the long term, what's it cost?
Well,
Yeah, my ego's been severely bruised over the years by him, but no, that was exactly it. He was, we didn't know him at the time, and the car spoke for itself, and the car.
it did. It was ahead of its time at the time. It really was.
Well, I appreciate it.
It
But
really was.
I really don't want to glaze up. There were so many thinking. I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, and you think back about things. But there were so many things in that one weekend, specifically about that car, that really has led to why we do the things we do on the podcast itself, is to try and give these people these experiences, right? Because I remember vividly the struggles we had with that car were strictly around that intake and those carburetors.
Well, as a builder at the time, we're not Jesus, so we can't. Everything's not perfect, and people has issues, and the issue that you had, it was just one of those deals. I mean, it was.
But you knew the issue. You saw the intake, and he's like, "Yeah, that intake didn't seal, did it?" And I was like, "No, that's why it ain't got no water in it, because that's the only way to get it to stop leaking." But
you were
instantly,
just from A to B as quick as you could.
yeah, we unloaded up the hill. Yeah. It was still when it was down in the horse park area. We unloaded.
Did I
in the
tell
hill.
you not to embarrass me?
You did.
At that show?
That's exactly what you told me to do. We rolled it down the hill, cranked it to drive it in, and then pulled right in. And it was, had some vapor mist, coming out of the exhaust, right? Nothing bad, but enough if anybody knew what they're doing. They'd look. And he walked up and looked at it, looked at the car, said, "Nice car." And he looked under the hood, and he said, "It's got Barry Grant 6-shooter, right?" And he said, "I seen it smoking." I said, "Yeah, it ain't got no water in it." And he said, "That Barry Grant didn't seal up, did it?" I said, "No." And looked at the car, and that was it. Walked away, right? But instantly in my head, I'm like, man, so what it was a little bit of validation that we didn't screw nothing up, right?
Okay.
It was a part failure, right?
Yeah.
So that
Made you
goes a
feel
long
human.
way, because somebody else knew exactly what it was. And then he came back when they were doing the picks, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to pick this for top 25, but don't embarrass me. It's got to drive through. It's got to drive through." And it wasn't
Tube RTV. And
it didn't take. It wasn't a negative thing. I didn't take it the wrong. I took it as like, absolutely, it makes sense. We respect this show so much. We're so excited to get picked, and the reason the show is held in that regard is because you don't pick stuff that's going to embarrass you.
No.
It goes hand in hand. So, I understood it.
And these shows too, Josh. Everybody says, well, they're judged. You can't judge something like we do the Triple Crown, and there's 400 cars there, and you're trying to say judge them in 4 hours. You can't judge a car, and you pick a car is what you do, and it's so you can't. It's not an ISCA deal. It's just somebody's pick, and anytime you win an award like that, someplace people get their feelings hurt because it's just an opinion, and everybody's got an opinion, and it's sometimes my opinion counts and sometimes it doesn't count, but you try to. I got to sleep of a night, so whatever I pick, I'll stand by it, and
Right.
Sure.
good or bad.
I think that's one of the big stand-up things I've heard about you and picking the awards is afterwards you'll go around and talk to some of these guys and explain why it didn't get picked or what you didn't like or what you think could be improved on. And you don't get that at most shows. It's just the guys get pissed off if they didn't get an award and they walk away and don't know why.
Well, the problem
It's always hidden, too.
The problem I have, Phil, is people doesn't know who's judging who or who's judging that, and they keep it a secret. And I think that's a problem. If it's a secret who's judging it, then I feel like there's an issue there.
Right.
You got to know. I mean, you got to be stand up, and just because. I mean, Lord, at the Triple Crown, the first year was the friggin' quality was over the top. You could have picked 30 more cars very easily. But yeah, I try to treat people the way I want to be treated. And I tell my kid, if it's okay for you to do that, for you to have it done with you, for you, then it's okay to you do it to somebody else. And if you use that, I think you're fine. Now, there's going to be 1,000 people disagree with my opinions on stuff, and I'm sure you have a time or two. but
I understood,
I've
but I still
explained
disagree.
myself. Yeah, I know. But I think there's one time and I come over and explain myself,
You
the
did.
reason why.
Well, that's the advice I'll give. You hear, we've been in this long enough. You always hear guys, you've heard it about Alan Johnson that'll be on later on, right? You hear about, Alan's a quiet guy, right?
Alan who?
Yeah, I know. He's an up and comer. He's down the road, But you hear this about guys,
Alan's
especially.
just a quiet guy. Alan's a great guy. He's a good friend of mine. I've known him since he was probably 16 years old, and we've stayed friends all of these years.
It's funny the people that you hear, like, guys are like, well, man, Bobby's an asshole, or Alan's an ass. Like, well, man, what did he do to you? Well, I've never met him, but I heard he did so and so, so and so. Well, it's hard to like pass judgment if it's. I will say the advice I give, if anybody's unhappy at a show that you're doing picks at, if you've got thin skin, I wouldn't go ask you why you didn't pick their car, right? That'd be the best, because you're going to tell them exactly, not being mean, but you're going to tell them, and it's again, all you're giving is your opinion. You're going to be like, I wouldn't have done it that way.
Right.
I
Josh,
don't like that color.
If I know the car's close, then I'll be able to tell you why the car didn't win, because I'll know in my mind that this car was that close, and I've got to have a reason why I didn't pick it. Now, my reason, you may not agree with my reason, but that was the reason I didn't. And hello, I don't know everything. Everybody says, well, if it ain't black, it don't win. But boy, I really do like black. It does help. If it's on the bubble, that may get you over the bubble.
But again, that's what I think that we're touching on it briefly, but everybody got to understand is you go to these different shows. If anybody's man enough, or up front enough to say, I'm the one picking the awards, right? I'm picking these cars. It is a pick. It's your opinion. So you're going to go some other places and somebody else pick that's going to have a different opinion or different likes. You didn't like the color choice on the Catalina. He didn't like Barry's Catalina motor, right?
Yeah.
Loved everything about that car.
I loved everything else about the Catalina. But I told
that's your
him.
choice.
But I told
right.
you. That's just my opinion on a car. Which, who wants to know my opinion? But I think if you look at something, you need to see everything, not one thing. Does that matter? And I could understand why you painted the motor that color. Right. But as soon as I seen it, the motor stood out, and I seen the motor, which I shouldn't have seen the motor.
The whole car,
Cindy says, my wife says, well, you flame cars. I said, but if they're flamed correctly, you don't see the flames. You see a flame car, not flames.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but
putting four wide on the a cover Street Rider on the strip of Pigeon Forge all flame. You see the flames. Now, that's a great cover. But that's an iconic cover.
Yeah, it is pretty.
How do you handle that? You're talking about the amount of talent that was at the first show, and you've dealt with that at Shades too. When you've got
nothing like that. Those Shades was really, really good. I always said Shades. If you had a really good car that was detailed, that had a good theme, that everything was, I thought it was pretty easy to win the top 25, because you had 25, and if the car was done real nice, and of course everybody says, well, you didn't look at my car. Did you see me park you when you drove through? I looked at your car.
That's all it takes.
Because I was more impressed on how it came down the hill. Did it turn go in?
Yeah, you're looking 20 minutes before it gets to you.
And how did you sit in it, and did it sound all right? And how many times did you have to back up the turn to go up the hill? I didn't like, And I looked at it, and then that tells you the ones that you really thought, then you knew what to go look at. If you'll notice, we'll walk around a couple of times and never write down nothing, because you'll get an idea in your head which ones you need to go back to.
Sure.
And that's the ones you go back to. Now, will you miss something? Absolutely. At Triple Crown last year, I missed a car. I really did, because I was sitting there waiting for them to bring them in, and this car should have been there, and I missed it. And you know what I did? I went to John Hall. I walked straight up to him and said, I apologize. What for? I said, I missed your car. I was waiting on that car to come, and it never come. And I said, where is that car at? Well, you missed it. So the only thing that I knew to do is just
own it, right?
Yeah, own it and say, hey, it's my fault. It's my fault. But and it's really hard to do. It kills you sometimes to walk up to somebody like him and say, dude, who knows what I was going to get, but whatever I got, well, I deserved it because it was my deal. But I didn't want him to go away thinking that it was the car, because it wasn't a car. It was a mistake that I made.
That probably goes a lot longer way than actually winning the trophy, though. I think.
Well, and he did, but I hope it's. I mean, he said it was. I hope deep down, I'm sure he was bothered with it, but I hope that. But that's all I can do is I can't make another. We did 30. I can't do 31.
Sure. Yeah.
I can't do.
Well,
it.
we're doing a pretty high end car for John, and he still wants to debut at the Triple Crown. So I think you did all right.
We're good.
So,
we're good.
we're
We're
in good
good.
shape.
Oh, I remember you misspelled his name though.
You did JOH?
Well, it wasn't me. He's behind the camera. But you don't see
I
him
was
that
sitting there and
often.
I thought, oh, Lord. I said, at least I'm
But
not.
he probably got
It
it
wasn't
from
as bad as
John
Chip's
York.
award.
Right.
Well, he couldn't even
what
spell
happened with that?
triple.
He did the Triple P pencil award.
Yeah, he
Oh,
shipped it
okay.
in there, and I said, Chip,
Yeah.
hello, I barely got a high school education, and I can spell triple, I think. So, and he couldn't. So,
If you're say you got, you're picking 25, you're picking 30, right? And you got a couple of instances where you got cars that are, on the bubble, right? And you're weighing stuff against each other, especially when you're talking about first year, any year really at Triple Crown, but the first year in particular, because you had a lot of banger, heavy hitter cars from the last 5-6 years. So how are you weighting a new car versus an older car?
I didn't, because it's a new show, and I think, I own quite a bunch of old cars that's done real well that once the car makes it through the season, then they put it to bed. And some of these cars are really good cars that you'd really like to see. You all did a Corvette one time when I was up there. I mean, sometimes I think people would like to see these cars come back, and we gave it a show that we brought some old Riddler cars back. Those cars were good.
Oh yeah.
And it was a brand new show, so I said, hey, it's on again. It's a new deal. So
I like that.
Yeah, that was awesome to see all that stuff back out there that you hadn't
But
seen
why
in a few
not?
years.
Why not? Because the magazines will always say, what's new now? Because once they shoot it, that's old business. That ship sails. So that gives, with a new show like that, I think it gave people a chance to bring some of the old cars back out that we've seen, and some of them were very, very good cars. They really was.
There's a window too. Like you go to the same show 4 years in a row and you see the same guy there with the same car. You're kind of like, all right, seen it, right?
Yeah.
But then when we showed up to Triple Crown the first year, you're walking through, you're like, oh man, I ain't seen that in a while.
Yeah,
oh man, I haven't seen that in a while.
But
And
some
there's
of those cars, Josh, were timeless cars. If they'd have come out that year, they would have been just as good.
Yep.
And that's what you look for, is sort of a timeless car that could come out 10 years later
and
everybody
do well.
still be cool about it. Don't you think?
And we were
You
just
almost do like a Hall of Fame award or something to bring some of those back and judge them against each other.
Yeah.
That'd be a cool idea.
We were just talking about that. Was that with Vinny? I don't remember a lot from the Vinny podcast. But we were
No,
talking
nobody
about,
remembers a lot from the Vinny podcast.
Some of those most memorable cars.
Oh yeah,
And
we were
was
talking
it you
about
that brought up Bobby's Vicky, or was it Vinny?
Vinny brought up the Vicky.
Yeah.
We talked
about the Challenger. We talked about Allen's Cuda. Some of those cars that just forever. Like if you brought them out tomorrow, and if you brought them out to the next show, the next Triple Crown, they'd be just as relevant. In my opinion.
We try to do that, or I have in cars. I try to do what they call a timeless car that you can't tell. I mean, okay, if it came in with pastel paint on it and a tweed interior, it was built in the 80s.
Sure.
We know that. But I like to try to think that we build a car, and maybe even Alan does too, speaking of the Cuda. The Cuda could come back out right now and you'd love it.
Yep.
But it's a timeless car, and it doesn't hit. And these trendy cars are sort of like those 60 songs of one-hit wonders. They're really good at the time, but then they just sort of go away. But I went to when Alan's car was at SEMA. Man, I looked at that Cuda, and it was fabulous. It really was. I went back to the restaurant that night, and I had 3 or 4 of our customers there, and we were eating, and I thought, man, I need to do that. I really need to do that. Did you see that Cuda? And a couple of my customers said, if you do that, then we're not your customers. They wanted it. my style of car versus Alan's style of car. Mine was a little different. Mine was more traditional type stuff, and so that taught me a lesson. And I try to tell the guys, at the deal we do at SEMA, the builders panel, stick to what you know, not what somebody else knows, and do your own deal, because you'll treat your customer better if it's what. If a customer's coming to me, he's coming to me for the style of car I'm building, not for the style of car that you guys are building or whatever. Not saying that that's wrong, but it's just a different style of car. Like the car Troy had at the Roadster show, I couldn't build that car. There's no friggin' way I could build that car.
I don't know just about anybody that could build that car, to be honest with you.
No,
only Troy and Adam could build that car.
Yeah, but you see some of this, guys, some of the stuff that you come out with, gosh, those stuff that you had at the Battle of the Builders, I was dumbfounded, because I don't know how you think of it. Even that Grand National you had at Columbus a few years ago, you showed me. What do you think of that stuff?
I
mean, I mean, it's great, but I mean, you've got to, of course. I mean, you all see some of the later model stuff, and we don't, because we're not in the body shop deal or whatever, and so you don't see some. But the stuff the Ring Brothers do, I mean, it's fabulous. But I can't build it. I don't know how to build it. But Mike and Jim said, well, we can't build what you build, because you got to see it in your mind's eye to build it, and if you can't see it, you can't build it.
Yeah. Well, we bag on the Rings a lot. They're some of our best buddies, but we bag on them a lot. And I've got Josh. You got to tell us about the comment. We're in the airport on our way here. The guy standing in line. We're at the airport on the way here. I'm gonna throw Josh under the bus on this.
Oh, thanks.
And he can deal with Mike and Jim Ring, but this dude, he's wearing, like, his pants are flared out. He's got rhinestones. He's got a big necklace. There's buckles. His hair's spiked. It's like he's got everything going on. And Josh says, "Shit, that looks like a few Ring Brothers cars I've seen before."
in a human being. It wasn't about it. He just had all the things. And that's not that's not a dig to the Ring.
No, but they pull their styles. It's so badass. I mean, it's over the top. They've been absolutely crushing it. But it's way more detailed than what most people do.
It is.
It's their style.
It's you got to build. We try to tell these young builders to find your style instead. Barry Lobeck had a style.
Yeah.
And he had a style. Boyd had a style. All of us, and Roy Brizio, it's a Roy Brizio car. All of that stuff. So, and somebody say I have a style. I like big back tires, little front tires, big old motors. Carburetors. I know a carburetor. It's a fuel injection. It scares me. It's like electricity. You can't see what's going on, so I don't like it. But,
well, you talk about everybody's got a style, and I 100% agree. But I wanted to get into this. I know you don't do this a lot, but you have told your story several times on podcasts. Everybody, we don't have to get in, start from the beginning, right? Working at a Ford dealer, young, right? And you glaze over the fact, you always talk about, you're building a street rod, you're building some stuff like that, and then all of a sudden, you're seeing everything that everybody's doing in California, and then you just have the wherewithal, you just think you've got the balls to just do it. You're like, I'm going to do that.
It's, I was fortunate enough to meet Pete, and he was a great piece.
Where did you meet him at? What show?
Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Back in the 70s, late 70s, probably been 79 or so,
NSRA
something like
show?
that. It was a NSRA, yeah, it sure was. Him and Jim Jacobs and Jim Hewing and Brian Brennan, that old magazine guy.
Yep.
He was with them, and I had a blown 5-window, and we, back then you drove everywhere. You didn't, if you had a trailer, it was taboo. You couldn't trailer, so you drove everywhere. So Cindy, my wife, was with my girlfriend at the time. The car was across the field over there where it was at, and I had them stop because Eddie Lawson owned Eddie's Rod Shop in Kingsport, Tennessee. He was the first Pete and Jake dealer around here, so Eddie introduced me to Pete. I knew it because I was using their stuff, so I sent Cindy across the fairgrounds to get the coupe. Well, she's coming across the fairgrounds in this coupe with a blown engine in it, and all of a sudden I hear something go, wah! I look up and there's rooster tails of grass going up, and I said, Pete said, "Is that your car?" And I said, "Yeah, it's my car." And it was her driving it. And I said, "What were you doing?" She said, "Well," everybody was looking at me like I didn't know how to drive it, and I was just going to show them I did. So they got over there and we met. They looked and they looked all at it, and they loved the car and thanked me for using their product, and which was all a Super Bell axle and all that stuff. Well, then, gosh, like I was telling you earlier, I was young, and that was just great that they liked the car, and it made a big impression on me. So me and Pete became friends, and we went to. I'd go to California to see him. Well, when the car that I did for the Riddler years ago, I needed some. Well, this is a coupe before that. I had an idea that I wanted to put a set of VDO gauges in it, but I wanted some aluminum bezel or something to go around it, and the old factory door handles was terrible. I said, could you know anybody could make me? He said, yeah, there's a machinist that works at Disney that would do that at his house. And I said, who's that? He said, it was Boyd Coddington. I said, you think he'd do it? And he said, yeah. So I called Boyd, and Boyd said, yeah, I can make these door handles and this bezel for the dash. So that's how I met Boyd, was through Pete introducing me to Boyd, the machinist at Disney. Well, then me and my wife would go to California to visit. Well,
You knew what you was doing. You take Cindy along on all of them trips.
Well, she was good. Peter, Pete's son. This is funny. I'd go out there and we'd ride bikes. I would ride motorcycles with Pete in the desert. Him and it was Bob Bowder and I forget the guy's name that did Alden Shocks. Golly, I forgot his name at all. But they had a place up in Temple City up near the mountains, and we'd ride bikes. And the first year that we went out there, Pete told Peter, which is Pete's son, that he was young at the time, that he was that my wife, or my girlfriend at the time, was going to babysit Peter, and Peter didn't want to stay, didn't want to do it at all. Well, when she came out by the pool with the bathing suit on, and she's in her late teens, early 20s, Peter decided he was going to stay at the pool with her that day. So that was the joke, but it was funny. But
you know what? I thought about it. I probably will just stay here
he
at the
decided
house.
to stay.
Go all day, have fun.
Yeah. But and then I would watch what they were doing there. And California was always a year or two ahead of us as what the trends were. So I had this bright idea that I was going to build a 3-window coupe, and it had Webers and all that stuff on it, but it was a really good car. But I shaved the door handles off of it, the hinges, left everything off of it, just slick boards and all of that stuff. Had a set of Halibrands on it with no wheel centers, just a hub showing, and it was cool. That's what they was doing out there. I took that thing to Stone Mountain, Georgia, to show that Stone Mountain was one of the biggest things there, because if you won back in the 70s, you got your car on the T-shirt.
Okay.
And Henry Dana, you remember Henry?
Oh, yeah.
Henry won it 2 or 3 times, and Henry and Nancy, they were friends of mine, and they'd come down there, and Henry would win it, and then I had won it the year before with a 5-window, a blown 5-window that was all cow lights and all of that Zenith wire wheels. It was Jag rear end that was relaced, and the wheels were. And so I took this coupe down there, and it was good. It was really a good coupe. We drove it down there, and I'm sitting there in the award ceremony, and I'm in my early 20s, and I'm listening, and they go through all the awards, and I ain't won nothing. And I'm thinking, man, this car is really, it's better than the car I had last year. So I go up to them and I asked them, I said, did you not see my car? Oh, yeah, we seen it. Said, it'll be a really good car when you finish it. And I said, finish it? And they said, yo, I didn't have this
Center
on it,
caps
didn't
on
have
it.
that on it, and all that stuff. And I said, guys, the car's finished. Well, we didn't think it was finished. I said, back then they gave away a Best Unfinished award.
Okay. Under construction or something,
Yeah.
right?
And I said, well, guys, if it wasn't finished, it had to be the best friggin' unfinished car here. It was too finished to be unfinished. And I got mad and left, and my wife tickles me. She said, when we left, we come back and we blew the top. It had a top insert in it, and the top insert come loose. I left, and anyway, but that was my story about trying to get ahead of the curve. And then 2 years later, that was the trend, But that's sometimes you learn.
Too ahead of it.
Yeah, but,
For the East Coast.
yeah.
How?
Yeah, for Tennessee, you were probably 10 years ahead in California.
I still are. You're right.
we've talked about it a bunch of times with, Alan and Jesse and stuff like that. From the, Jesse doesn't really count because he's like a half Yankee transplant, so he's not really from
Yeah.
the South. But there's a little bit of, and maybe I'm only speaking for myself. I know I've always had, there's a little bit of the chip on your shoulder of not being from California or not being, coming from the South. Now, it's a lot different now, but it definitely 20 years ago where it was like, you always felt, maybe it was self-imposed, you always felt like you just didn't get the respect that
I think a lot of it, Josh, was your magazines was out there. Mm-hmm. And it was easy for them to travel 2 miles down the road and take the cars. That's the reason your Boyd and all of, I mean, they were blessed to have all the magazines right there, so they got all the features because people didn't travel as much as they used to. But I think back here we always built a little bit more showy car, I guess. That was more driver stuff in California because, Lord, the weather's good there all the time. They drive them all the time. So, but yeah, you're right. It's just trying to beat them. But it's I think a lot of it was just the reason they got all the attention was the magazines were there, right? And rightly so. It was easy for Street Rodder magazine to go down and shoot the cars, and
right.
But it was harder for us back here. Gray Baskerville shot the first car that I did back in the 70s, a coupe, and I thought it was just the greatest thing in the world for somebody like him to shoot the car, So.
Well, I was going down that path because I really want to know, and maybe it's just who you are. It's just in you, right? But we've always talked about Bobby's swagger, right? and it's a true statement. Right?
It's almost become like almost every podcast. It's
Yeah,
like a segment of the podcast. It
but
comes
there's
up
there's always memories, whether it be you rolling into Indy or at Shades rolling down the strip, even rolling into Columbus and being in a daily driver or whatever, all blacked out with wheels on a escalator or something.
Don't waste a crowd.
Yep. Nobody can park a car like Bobby. Yeah. Either Indy or Columbus.
Boyd used to call me and he'd say, "Are you coming at Indy?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I'm coming. We're going." I said, "Just fine. Just don't. That's fine. It'll be fine." And we'd always wait, and we'd come in. That's when I was young, and we had all the flame cars and big motors, and we'd come in rolling in, and it was fun back in the day, though it really was. But as I told you, Cindy's mother says sometimes you lose your stinger. Maybe I've just lost my stinger
Lost
now.
your stinger.
I just don't. Now I don't care. I'm trying to. That's the reason I wanted to do the Triple Crown is I wanted to give some of the younger people a place to come, and Case has been God sent for me. He's Mr. Entertainer and he does all of it. I just shake hands and kiss babies with it, and people, it'll be hard to believe, and I'm sure I'll get a lot of flack about this, but I don't like politics, and I'm trying to keep it out of something like that. And I hope that's what we're doing there is giving somebody a place to come and have a good time. And I think that everybody tells me the atmosphere feels totally different at that show, but it's not about the money. And everybody said, "Oh," I said, "No, it's not. I don't have to do it. Case don't have to do it. We want to do it, and not knocking good guys or NSRA because they're doing it for a living. We don't have to, so it's fun for us. And I'm tired of chasing these big awards myself. I've chased them, and it's hard for some of the young guys to do it. I mean, the competition out there is friggin' stupid, and so it's easier for me to sit back and look and watch them come in and give them a good place to do it. And anyway, that's my little spiel on that.
Just having that venue, I think, is huge for builders, all the new up-and-comers as well. I mean, if you don't have a spot to showcase your talents, you don't have a goal to build a car for,
right.
I think that drives most of the industry, that you want to win that award. It's the purpose that we're here for, so you need the stage to show off
Phil,
on.
you remember, you were probably young at the time, but Indy was a place. Oh man, it was a hoot. I mean, you always wanted to go to Indy. It rained every year.
It was,
but you wanted
horrible
to go to Indy. My wife always built her a roadster every year, and it never got out with it didn't get wet the first year because it always rained it in. But that was absolutely the Mac Daddy place to come, but. Anyway, I'm like I say, I hope the Triple Crown does that same thing and gives these guys a place. And some people complain that it's that I'm the one that picks, and yes, it is. I am the one that picks, and we give 30 awards, but there's still 14 or 15 of you guys that come and pick.
We always
too.
tell them that you told us what to pick, though.
I
We blame
did.
it on
Yeah,
you.
we just tell them it's all politics. It's whatever Bobby likes. It's just we just.
I think it might have been Mike Ring asked, well, what about if I pick the same car that Chip picks? And I said, well, it gets 2 awards. Well, then it goes on down the line. I said, listen, I am not telling you what to pick. I said, a lot of times I'm told what I can pick at a show, but I said, it's not. And people complain about that. Well, this car won 4 or 5 awards. That's
Then it's a
fine.
good
Better car.
I'm not telling Roadster Shop what to pick, because if it is, then it's my pick. It's not your pick.
Yeah.
And I said, if you're the car owner, if all 14 or 15 of you builders pick the same car, that's a hell of a car, ain't it?
Oh, yeah.
And that, I mean, but
it's
but
deserved.
and if I don't pick it, then you all don't pick it. Then sometimes I get to use that. Well, you didn't get a pick from them either, so let's not just been me. But I think it's more fun like that, because I've had the builders come up and say, give me your list. I said, I'm not giving you my list. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to do it, because I think if I asked you to pick a certain pick, then it needs to be your pick.
Right. What
I
is what
think
it
it's
is.
the awards there are fantastic. I mean, I will say that we had a black and white '70s Chevelle that won an award there. I think you picked it for something, and that car, I was pretty proud of that car, and it didn't do shit anywhere it went. Right, it just fell on its face. It was so under the radar, and that was the very first time that anybody had recognized the car, and it was great to see.
What
And
color was it?
It was black and white.
Yeah, we knew we kind of had a ringer.
If you looked at the
we should have
percentage,
debuted it
mostly
there.
black.
I want to do a red interior. He said no.
Pretty good sized tire on the back. Right? Car sat good, but it's, and then to Phil's point, like for builder young guys and guys wanting to debut something. I mean, the reality is, I think we all want the approval or the acceptance of each other, like at these awards, right? So when you're bringing a car out to a show like that, and you've got, I mean, there's not a show out there that you don't hear more builders that are enthusiastic about. So for everybody to show up at that show, and for somebody to debut something at that show, I mean, you're being like judged by your peers. Everybody,
And you need to be.
and that's what it's all about, and that's what makes I think that's what makes it so damn special.
Well, you said never waste a crowd. Somebody's got to make the crowd.
Right.
Yeah. Somebody's got to put.
Well,
put
Josh, the
crowd in.
first year I told Gary, me and him thought, that I said, okay, we know enough people that we can probably ask enough favors and get enough people in. Like, I called Roy Brizio and I said, Roy, me and Case is going to do a show in Nashville. Of course, he tries to talk like me. And well, tell me when it's going to be, and I'll be there. But you call in a bunch of favors, and the first year, but the second year, the show has to get them there, because, I mean, they're not going to spend the money to come in just because I asked them to the second year, and it did, and I was so humble. Now this year, gosh, we've got 183 vendors, and they're all automotive vendors. They're all, and we're running out of spots, but it's humbling. It really is. The first year when you was talking about all the cars, all the older cars, I was dumbfounded. I don't know how you all guys, but I was saying, gosh, look at these freaking cars.
Out there.
They are. Then they're saying, open it up, give more awards, and I'm not going to give more awards. I mean, I'm not going to give a participation award. I'm not going to do it.
No.
If you want to win something, win it with the big dogs, but if you're coming, and if you're not winning, look at some of the stuff that's there and get ideas from it, because you're going to see some really, really good stuff. Now in 26, the guys from the Bay Area, that 200 Club and stuff, Dennis Varney and that, they're going to have a road tour come in, which guys from California, they're going to drive in, which I think
That'll be cool.
That'll be, people around here will get to see cars that they normally don't get to see. So, yeah.
I have to say, I think last year, probably the award ceremony was one of the most fun times I think I've ever had at a hot rod show.
Absolutely. I mean, Phil kept looking at each other. I mean, it was just like, I hope this goes on for another couple hours, because it was.
Normally the award show, you're like, fuck, let's a thing over, want to leave, want to go home, want to pack the trailer up.
Was
Well, some
amazing.
people did. Some people complained about it went too long, but Phil, it wasn't
blast.
planned.
Yeah, it was just
That's
all
why it
spontaneous
was,
and-
because it wasn't corny, it
was
wasn't
just fun.
planned, it wasn't.
Oh, it was a
cringe.
little corny, I think, but it was.
No, it wasn't at all, because it was all spontaneous. And at the end of the day, you raised a bunch of money.
About $70,000 in that little deal for Gary Sinise Foundation.
Yeah.
And if people, I mean, what did it last? Another 30, 40 minutes. too long, but for what the
But it was the most fun.
Yeah,
Like,
it was awesome.
It was absolutely
It was
a blast.
It was a good time.
but you couldn't have planned it. It was one of those deals.
No,
that-
we could
that-
tell what you had on and underneath. You
I
didn't
know,
plan
that's
it.
what my wife said.
Yeah.
I said, "Did you think?" She said,
I
"You
think
should
there were
have
some
gone."
bets lost because we would assume Bobby was a tighty whitey.
Yeah,
You thought briefs, huh?
We were going home, and she hadn't said anything about it. I looked down in the crowd, and she was there, and my daughter was there, and my daughter she just shook her head. And Cindy was laughing, and going home, she said, "You know, you have better underwear than you had on." I said, "Honey, I never dreamed that I was going to pull my pants off."
Be happy I had some.
And then Charles from Color Studio, he grabbed my pants and he pulled my underwear down too. So it was
Could have been the last show you ever had.
of course, then Alan Johnson, he had on matching underwear. You know, he
Of
comes
course,
prepared
yeah.
the whole
But
time.
Inch dresses him though.
Oh, yeah.
I said, if you think Alan's got any humility about him at all, or us, that we've got any egos, you're wrong. But it was for a good cause. It really was. And that being said, Gary Sinise is coming this year with his band and setting up a whole big
Cool.
whoop-diddy-doo.
That's cool.
And it will be this, but
Very
that's a
cool.
good cause. That's
Yeah,
a good,
it is.
It's a really good cause. But
You talked, I'll bring it up again. You mentioned, never waste a crowd. We talked about how you roll into shows. I mean, we could have a whole podcast just talking about Shades of the Past and, Cruising the Strip and some of the covers. I mean, that's just been, they were iconic to me. I know they're iconic to all of us.
But Josh, what helped us there was people like yourself. And when I asked Boyd to come back, and Boyd came to Tennessee to a show, I mean, that drawed a crowd. But it was friends. It was all of us. This is a family.
Where did you did it with your daughter's softball team? The way they looked in the uniforms. Where did you learn that, or was that just always in you? I mean, it's different from a California guy to have just like sheer. I mean, you're like. I guess Johnny Cash didn't learn it from anybody. He just was born that way.
You're born with it.
Well, I always said our softball team, we weren't the greatest in the world, but all 11 of those girls, I'm really proud of them. All of them went to college. All of them played the Division II, not Division I, but all of them played. All of them's got rings. They all won a championship. But you've got to carry yourself a certain way, and that's what we told them, like professionals, when you come in. And when we would come in, all the girls would line up. Troy would always, everybody think we was talking about cars. We were never talking about cars. We was talking about softball. And he built this friggin' cart that was unreal. It had a pitching machine on it and everything. His daughter played. And so I fell in behind him and built a cart for them. And we'd carry their bags in and had a kicker sponsored a boom box and all of that stuff. And they'd march in behind us and we'd be playing music coming in. And all the other teams would turn around and look and thought, whether we was any good or not, boy, they thought we were good.
Yeah.
It's team. Sometimes you take some of the like cars that come with some of these high rent shops. The name will help the car. Mm-hmm. You get an unknown builder comes in with just the same car, and bless his heart, sometimes he don't get the attention. He's got a better car, but it's the presence that you come pulling in. It's like I said, that's an extra player on the team.
You don't have to have you don't have to be quiet and meek, and you don't have to have the ego, right? But there's a certain presence to come in, drive in, walk in, show up with the rig, show up with your booth. I mean, it could be a trailer and a pop-up tent, but coming from Alabama, the saying is, act like you've been there before.
Absolutely.
Right. So
But
no matter where it is,
not be arrogant. There's a lot that's a little arrogant. Don't be arrogant about
100%.
it. You better be blessed, and you better dance with the people that takes you to the dance too, because at the end of the road, that's all you've got.
yeah.
I had a magazine guy tell me that one time.
O'Brien.
Wanted some cars, and I wasn't going to let him. I was going to let somebody else have a car, and I remember he told me, he said, and he's helped me through the years. He said, let me tell you something. You need to dance with the people that took you to the dance. I hung the phone up. I called him back, and I said, you got it. Don't use it again, but you got it. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. You got it. We always talk. We and him kid each other. He's a great friend, but you do. That's what you have to do. You gotta. I think that makes a big deal on how you carry yourself. I really did. And I always told you something, when we were doing this podcast and stuff, and I don't have a problem with it, but I never want to do anything. Here I fixing to say something, I just did it, but I don't want to do nothing that my daughter would be embarrassed over. And I took my pants off on stage, so that ruined all that. But I'm talking about, You got to look
Right.
at that. You got to look at that.
Yeah, you're right.
Your mama's watching somewhere or another.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Be careful.
Yeah.
And treat people the way you want to be treated. And
Yeah, because
some of them, you
Treat 'em-
You like Patrick Swayze said, you be nice till it's time not to be nice. And
yeah.
some of them you don't really care.
Well, it is I mean, I think a lot of folks, especially coming into it, take for granted or don't understand how small of an industry or how
Absolutely.
tight, not small, but how tight.
Yeah, you don't understand that at first. You learn it after you've been in the industry for a while.
Yeah.
And you realize the relationships and, who's who and who
There
gets
ain't no
along with
secrets.
who. But yeah.
No, you better watch it. You sure can, because before you know it, if you say something, somebody else will come right back in and tell you, call
yeah.
and tell you, because they really like to spread bad news.
Or you could say it in a hotel room and not even know who's in the hallway when you're talking about it. You can be bitching about Bobby on the show.
I remember
in the hotel.
that happened.
That didn't happen to me, but I
It'll
know
get
it
back
happened to
it.
somebody.
I know it did. That didn't help them either, did it?
No, it didn't. When you're all
But
staying in the same hotel,
when you're
you probably ought
judging
to keep
cars,
that-
though, Josh, you can't. I had a lesson in softball because I coached those girls in softball, and a parent came up to me one time and chewed me out about her daughter wasn't playing the position that she thought she would play. Well, if she'd have been watching, they were young at the time when we were rotating positions to try to learn the girls, and it was her time. In another inning, she would have rotated back in. But guess what? That next inning, she didn't rotate back in because of what her mother said to me about that. And that really bothered me because I took it out on a kid when I shouldn't have, over something that she didn't do. It was over something mother did. So that being said, you judge a car by not who built it or not who owns it.
Right.
Whether you like the builder or you don't like the builder, you like the owner, you don't like the builder, that has nothing to do with the car itself. So I try my best to try to not to look at window stickers or whoever owns it, because you can't, because sometimes that'll sway you one way or the other.
It absolutely can. I'd say, we do a little bit of judging stuff for the Best on RS award.
Yes.
And I think I'm a lot like you. Like I can see that truck right out there, and just like that, I'll know if I like it or not.
Absolutely.
And that's all I need to do. I can look at it. I can see John Jackson's house from out there. I'm like, John's got a pretty cool house, and you'll know if you like it or hate it. But the people that they walk you through every detail of you're like, I see everything. And just to your point, like you don't need to see that individual detail. You see the whole car.
Right.
So that to me, it's like a deterrent. It negatively affects the judging of the car when somebody takes you through every aspect to the front to the back of the build.
That's really a sort of maybe you might say it may be an insult that they're trying to show you what you should be able to see.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a builder, you should be able to see it. And I'll look at stuff on a car. I may miss a dent in the quarter panel looking at something in a door jamb or a window trim or something like that. And if I see something, say I'm big on glass, because it's hard to do to put the trim on. I mean, you look at the stuff, it's really hard to do. And if I see something, especially on a windshield or something like that I don't like, that's bad, then I may walk by it and then not come back because
You saw, you saw the thing.
I mean, it's something
small
that
detail will ruin the whole
obvious
car
that
for you.
if you didn't see that, if you don't have a problem with that, then there's a lot more other stuff that I don't need to look at.
A lot of times when you get that overzealous, either whether the owner or builder, where it's like hey, tip to tail. I'm gonna start here at the headlight and we're gonna work all the way through. A lot of that is either new, naive, enthusiasm, right? And they're so excited, and to tell. I think that goes into play like act like you've been there before, because comes into, even if you're a new builder,
right. That's
you
a
got
good point.
You got to kind of understand of like,
That's a good
hey,
point.
these guys are looking at these cars for a reason. They know, if they miss something, they miss something. But I don't need to give them the whole dissertation of exactly everything I did because I'm super excited, right?
Yep.
And that's where it's hard because nobody's doing it like
And
purposefully.
sometimes I don't think it all should be about the award. I mean, if you don't like the way the game's played, don't play it. But that doesn't mean you don't have to come and watch it.
Sure.
So a lot of shows that I'll go to, well, it's true. I mean, I don't compete a whole lot anymore. I just come and have a real good time and watch everybody else. And I'm having a great time doing it. My customers are fine doing it. But it's I've got a customer from South Dakota. He said he'll sit over the trailer with one of his cars and they'll say, well, you're not going to put it in judging. I don't need them to tell me what I've got. I already know I've got a good car. So that makes it easier on me too. So when
Right.
that happens. So
Well, you talking about customer stuff. I've heard you say this a bunch of times. I remember years and years ago in one of the builders panels, you talking about customers, and the best thing and what you strive to do is have all your customers be friends, and all your customers talk to each other, and all your customers be excited about each other's builds.
Boyd always used to ask me, he said, how in the world do you have all them customers at your trailer? And I said, well, I'll use George Lang. He's a dear friend of mine. He's in the hospital right now, not doing very well
I know
either.
that.
So, but I'll introduce George to Larry, and Larry to Gary Brown, and all of those guys. Well, then I'll keep them informed on what projects we're doing for them, and they talk together, and so there's no secrets. And somebody said, well, what's this car? They'll ask, what's the car cost? I don't know what the car costs. Go ask him. Go ask my customer what it costs, because I don't keep track of it, and I prefer them not to keep track of it either, because you take the fun out of it.
Yeah.
If they start counting these dollars, then it's not fun anymore, because they don't have to have it. But it takes a lot of load off of me as a builder and them for them to entertain themselves. And they do. You see my guys over there, they're all talking. I'm walking around doing whatever I'm wanting to. But it's a family.
Yeah.
And when you start to build a car for somebody, it's sort of like a kid on a ball team. You need to see their parents first, because if we can't get along, then I don't need to do it, because it's going to be a 2-year marriage, and you better get along. And I don't care how it starts out. I want to know how it finishes.
I remember it stuck with me, and we've talked about it. We are, I would say probably the last 4 or 5 years, we are definitely very close to that with most all of our customers, on knowing each other, knowing about the stuff, and honestly just becoming way closer with our customers, friends-wise.
Well, you're giving them something they don't have to have.
Right.
And
look at Dave here now.
Yeah, Dave's over here slaving over the grill, cooking for Jesse,
Yeah.
And Dave's not even, a customer at Jesse's, but it's
fun
just
for him.
it's the group,
it's fun for him, and it's something that they want. And Lobeck asked me one time. He said, "How at Columbus? He used to set up where Troy was at, and he'd say, how do you afford to do that over there, and you don't sell anything?" I said, "You see those guys sitting over there? That's a place for them to come and sit down, have a good time, and it's well worth it. It's well worth it. We're not trying to sell anything. We're just trying to give them a place to hang out, because they sure don't have to do it, and they could go somewhere else and do it. But we got to give them something they're having fun. And wives need to have fun too, because the wife ain't having fun.
And nobody is.
They're yanked out
the
of there
husband
quick.
ain't having fun. So, but anyway, I've been real fortunate to have some really good customers, that really good friends. And
do you think that the attitudes are any different now with builders, friendships, stuff like that, from the newer group of builders than what, say, you and Alan and Bobby and Troy and Boyd and everybody else had then?
I think so. I think a lot of the younger builders, and I'm not knocking them, the work they do is phenomenal, but they want instant gratification, and I think you have to earn it. I really do.
I'm seeing a change though the last 3 years. It's getting better.
We're kind of privileged to see it through the podcast and meeting some people
maybe
like
so.
that. The Josh Sanders last podcast we did, young kid, 28 years old. And that was just so eye-opening to it's the first young guy that's come into the industry that I've seen that I've just been so
really
fucking impressed with.
Oh, but he carries himself right. He's smart.
Well,
knows
that's
all
what the builder should do, is he should try to please himself instead of me and you. If I'm building a car, then first off I've got to make me happy before I make you happy, and even the customer, I'll tell them. They say, "Well, I'm not happy with it," and I'm trying to please me, not them. Once I please me, then that's all I can do. If you're not happy with it, then we're screwed. And I think that's what some of the young builders need to do, is start doing that. Try to please himself, and instead of trying to please me at a show or somebody else, do your own thing.
I think that's got to be hands down the best advice there is. And I've always been kind of that way with a car. If it makes me happy. I could give a shit if it ever wins
You're
an
right.
award.
You're exactly
because
right.
that's the ultimate award to me, that if I'm satisfied with it, and if I'm satisfied with it, I know the customer will love it.
You're exactly right, because you're pickier than he is,
Yeah.
and you're going to see more stuff than he's ever going to see.
Yep.
It's just like you never know somebody till you live with them. It's one of those.
And
deals.
in the rare instance that there's along the way, if you're happy with something and they're not happy with something, honestly, that comes back to us, the builder, whoever it is, fault at the beginning, because you didn't vet that customer at the beginning.
Right.
Y'all didn't talk about exactly what he wanted. You didn't learn enough to know that it was going to be an issue, right? You do your job on the front side and know everything you need to know. You know if you make yourself happy, he'll be blown away.
Some of the builders that I've talked to, they blame it on the customer, because this is what the customer wants. Well, if you're the right builder, then you need to tell the customer, and I don't mean this in a bad way, what the end result he wants. So it's your job to lead him to that point. Then if it doesn't happen, then it's my baby. I don't blame it on them.
I remember there was a story about a certain car that was a pretty good car, but it didn't have no billet hood hinges on it. And it was because he said the customer wouldn't allow him to buy the billet hood hinges.
Well, what was that?
There was a car. Bobby knows the car.
Yeah,
It was in
yeah.
Nashville.
But it's if I get somebody to build me a new house, I don't need to tell them how to build it. I need to let them build it, and then but they need to have some input. Don't get me wrong. Maybe a little bit on, not on colors or not on that. But no.
What if they don't know how to build it? Then you had to tell them, right?
Yeah.
You're just gonna leave that one.
It hurt. Yeah, it hurts.
Jeremy, there's a bad spot talking about house stuff. So I had to give him a little shot.
But you know what I'm saying, and it's not being that you're better than anybody else. You're not this. It's just you're doing your job to tell that customer, what he thinks he wants, but sometimes what he thinks he wants is not what he wants, because you've already did it and it didn't work. So don't just say, well, that's what he wanted and that's what we're doing. He's the one's paying the bills. Well, he's paying you the bills because you're supposed to know what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a tough thing. I mean, you kind of learn that one the hard way. It takes years and years, I feel like, to figure that one out.
Yeah, even then, running a business, like to some extent, a lot of these younger guys, they're starting out small and the customer comes in, that's their only customer. Like, what do you do in that situation when customer wants something that you don't necessarily want to build, or might not be your style?
I wasn't at the builders panel this last year because my wife's mother had an issue and we didn't make SEMA, but one of the guys in the audience asked me that same thing, and I said, buddy, you're between a rock and a hard place there. I said, what I ended up doing was I did mechanical work and all of this stuff to try to pay the bills. I got to the point where I could build a car that I thought that I wanted to build and the customer wanted to build, and now you'll follow them a little bit, but some of the things you just don't build. You just have to say, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm not. Yeah. That's what I'm not going to do, because don't do it just because that's what they're wanting to do and it causes you a bad name or whatever.
Who was your first paying customer?
A guy, well, I guess it was probably Tom Clark. The guy that started the Bel Air Grills was probably the first big car that we did for him. He was a good friend of ours in town, and he was a member of the Shades of the Past. He started the Bel Air Grills, and we did some cars for him there in town. But I was building my own cars because that's what I wanted to. I could build them the way I wanted to build them, and we were doing. I was putting hoods on and chopping tops and doing all that stuff just to try to pay the bills. And then Tom came along, and I built a couple of cars for him, and then but I guess that was probably one of the big bills, first big bills that we did for a customer. It was a Flame Roadster that I did a pair of them. I did my coupe and a Flame Roadster back in, that would have been the early 90s. Purple? No, that was Gay Wilson. That was Gay Wilson's purple cars. We went on that purple craze. But I had this crazy idea that I wanted to build a Roadster and a coupe to match. And everybody was flaming cars, but there was flaming primered cars and stuff like that. They wasn't flaming a real slick car. Boyd did one for Butch Martino up in New York. That he got the only car I ever seen in the Smithsonian magazine.
Oh wow!
But it had some some more flame type flames. It wasn't the traditional flames like they do in Ohio. You know what? That
Oh, yeah.
Wade Hughes and them did for me. But
that was the flames.
Oh,
those
still is.
long
It still
licks.
is.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it
there
still
just
is.
ain't
It still
nothing.
is. But there's a funny story about that too. But about it and the flames. But on these two cars. But I wanted to do those two cars. Nobody had done a pair of cars, and I thought, man, we'll do a roadster and a coupe that matches, and it'd be great. And it was a big hit. But Wade Hughes and Bill Rail was the ones who flamed them. They did flame some cars for Bob Oney, and they'd done drag cars and stuff
It was
like
the
that.
Ohio flame jobs.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
that
was.
yeah.
So Bill was a little short guy. They called him Short Round, and he's the one that laid the flames out, and then Wade painted them. So we took Tom's car up first and had the flames put on it, or start to have the flames put on it. And I was telling Bill what I wanted on the car. And he rolled around on this little stool and looked at me and he said, boy, you flaming this car or am I flaming it? I looked over at Tom. I said, let's take this car out of here. I said, I ain't dealing with this crap. I ain't dealing with this crap. He said, no, I want it flamed. I want it flamed. I said, but he's telling us how to flame. He said, nope, you're leaving it. So we all the way back home. I said, I ain't flaming my coupe. I ain't doing it. I ain't listening to him. I ain't listening to him because, well, anyway, we flamed the coupe. Me and him become real good friends. But that's just the way he was. But it was one of those deals where I was saying, I came to him to flame the car, and I liked the way he flamed the car, and I was trying to tell him how to flame it, and I stepped on his toes, and I got scolded for it, and rightly so, so I took it. And
did he take any of your input, or was he
none.
You
Now
came to
after
him,
that, of course, I told him, how everybody. I said, now guys, if you'll do this for me, we're going to get the magazine, we're going to get the cover, we're going to get this. And Wade always said after that, he said, everybody always told us that, and we never did get nothing. He said, you were the only one that got done what you said you were going to do. But of course, I had it planned. Baskerville was going to shoot him and all of that stuff. But it was, but after that, we became real good friends, and it hasn't been an issue since. Bill later on passed away, and now if I flame a car, I always told them, if I flame a car, then you all can flame it, and I've stuck to that. And the cars that we flame, now have I learned how to do it? Yes, I have, because I've messed them up. My front fenders on my coupe have been rolled under 1,000 times. I learned how to paint flames by fixing them. I picked my wife up at the airport at Louisville one time, and there's a speed break there, and I was in my coupe, and when I picked her up, we left, and I caught that curb. And, it's all, you always hear it. I mean, it's a great sound. She said, you're not going to go out and look? I said, I ain't going to look.
exactly
I know
what it looks
exactly
like.
what it does.
Well, there's your answer. You've always said, man, I don't know how he drives those things around with them down the thing. Well, there's your answer. That's exactly
they're
what
broke. Gay Wilson's. You said something about Gay Wilson's purple cars. Gay was a friend I did not know Gay, and he came in here from Memphis, and Steve Leggins was building him some cars down in Memphis. Well, he got tired of living in Memphis and wanted to move up here, and I'm the only one that he knew. Well, Johnny Friend that owned Hunter's Custom Automotive, he had a purple coupe. It was John Bohannon painted. It was Sickens purple. And it was a 3-stage deal, and it was a bear to paint. But anyway, Gay bought that car, and he wanted it flamed like my car. So Wade and Bill Rell came down, and they flamed it. And Gay came in to pick it up, and me and my wife took him and Stephanie out to eat on a Sunday night, and he was leaving to go back to Memphis on Monday morning. The building burned on Sunday night with his car in it.
Oh, that was the night of the fire.
That was the night of the fire. So we had to call him at the hotel and tell him to come, and he watched his car burn in the shop, burn to the ground. Now, that's the first car we done for him.
Damn.
And it burned. There was 17 cars lost in there. So
What year was that?
98. My dad passed away in 97. The building burnt in 98, and that, you all lost your dad, so you know how that is. And Lord, the world's crashing in around you. You lost everything, and I had basically no insurance to speak of. And I had everything that I had collected from the time I started over when I was in my teens was was in that building. Aluminum motors. There's aluminum motor behind the shop right now that's 4 cylinders. It burnt down. It just melted down. Pete Shaporis came in. He came in one year with Billy Gibbons was doing a concert over in Knoxville, and Pete and Billy came over, and Pete picked up some of the burnt Halibrands and stuff, and he said he put them on the wall at SoCal, said reality check, where all of that. We lost 14 cars, and we built back in 45 days. Cindy said, what are we going to do? And I said, we have no other choice. We got to build back. So one of these days I'm going to stop and cry about it, but I hadn't had time since. But
think about it.
You want to talk about owning it? That's some phone calls to have to make to some customers.
Yes, it is. And they all were fine with it. I mean, it was one of those, Lightning struck the building, and it was proved by, they sent some of the insurance people that came in, and Lightning struck it, and there was really nothing we can do. But if you look at things like that, if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be sitting here today with you all, because that made me start over. In 98, I had to start back from scratch. You go into a shop and you don't have a nut, you don't have a bolt. I mean, when we started, tools were gone. We had nothing. We had to start back from scratch. So that made us have to, and I took every bit of the money that I had saved to build back. So you had to start over. And then, so I would have been 44 years old at the time. My daughter was born the next year, which I was 45. But it toughens you up a little bit. You had to go back to work. And we were doing pretty good at the time. I was doing some of those Speed Stars. You remember the Speed Stars that I did? I was doing some of those, and we were sort of rocking and rolling. Everything was fine. And I thought, man, I've got it made. Well, then, about the time I had it made, it made me. So
the Speed Star thing, I'm glad you brought it up. I mean,
that's right when we kind of got started and came in, and going back to Indy, I mean, you'd see you roll in with like 47 of those things.
It was
like, holy shit, that is the coolest fucking thing.
What's crazy
ever.
is how many of them got built, but you could still make them your own. Like, there were so many different styles and so many different builders that did so many different ones, and even you knew it was a Speed Star, but then it was like, oh wow, that's different.
Nobody did them like Bobby did.
Oh no,
they just
did. Boyd, sir, I was traveling in and out there quite a bit, a couple of times a year, and then he would come back and see me, and we'd do a lot together. And he was building the Boydsters. Well, him and Chip was. So I was building Cindy a 32 Roadster, and we was out there. He just got this Boydster done, and Cindy looked at it and she said, "Boy, I really do like that." And I had the chassis built for her for a Roadster. So I asked Boyd. I said, Marcel was building the bodies, and I asked him what the body would cost for it. And gosh, at that time it was like $45,000. This was back in the early '90s, or when he first started. It was '93 or '94, something like that. And I thought, man, I can't afford no body like that. And I said, so I went back home and I said, those windshields that you had made. He had 10 of the windshields made. And I said, would you let me have a windshield? He said, yeah. So Chip sent me a windshield. And there's a deal about that too, that I would have killed Chip over that. But and then Daryl Zip was building the zippers back in the 90s. Yeah. So me and Daryl was friends, and I had built a couple of zippers. We gave one away at the Shade Show. So I told Daryl, I said, I need one of your cows. So he sent me a cow section. I told him what I was doing. And then Boyd sent me a windshield. It's supposed to have been a windshield like they had, but Chip sent me one that had been cut. And we didn't know it had 2 inches cut off of it. So they didn't have any more windshields. Okay. They had the mold that they had for, anyway. So Boyd said, you're going to go back to Tennessee, and you're going to have duct tape and Bondo and fiberglass and build one of these friggin' cars. And then he said, just let Marcel. I said, Boyd, I can't afford it. I said, and people can't afford $45,000 body. So I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Well, it won't work. Well, about 400 later, it worked. And, we built one, and I took it to SEMA, and I remember I took I had it mocked up at the side of the garage. It was duct tape and Bondo and just half of it. And I showed it to Shaporis, and Shaporis was in the SEMA board at the time. He said, man, I think that'd look good. And I said, yeah, it probably would. So anyway, I built a plug, and then Rat's Glass, George Long, he was in the race car stuff right then, so he pulled the Roadster off of it. Well, then I built Cindy the Roadster, and then I decided to build a coupe. So then I built me the coupe. And they went over really, really well.
Oh, yeah.
But it was trendy. I mean, it was one of those
man.
deals that it lasted about 6 or 7 years, and it petered itself out. And
Yeah.
what you got to do, you got to be thankful for what you got, and then move on to something else. And so that
It was
that's what
trendy,
I did,
but I could almost see it making a comeback. Like enough time.
You know,
has
Zach at
passed.
Z-Rods, he wants to do a carbon fiber one, and I said,
Yeah.
Zach, what? But he said, would you help? I said, you get a carbon fiber body, and I'll build one of them. But I've got the original coupe in my
Do you?
basement. I've got the Roadster, and I bought a track nose out of Arizona. I only did 3 track nose with
I like the
independent
track nose.
with
Yeah, the
straight
track nose
axle
was
front
cool.
ends on it. I won Street Rod of the Year with that, but I only built 3 of them myself, and one didn't get built, so I bought it. So I've got it back that I'm going to rebuild. I'm going to build the track nose back.
Yeah.
So
I still think that should have been like a modern take on a Pearson Brothers or SoCal coupe with one of those.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean,
man.
it's got all the right lines for it.
I based it off the Pearson Brothers coupe. Yeah,
The
I
chop
sure
on it.
did, yeah.
I mean, it's about as close as you can get and still.
But
see
it
out
was
of
the most
damn thing.
unpractical. You couldn't
Very-
see out
very
of it. It was
unpractical.
cool, but
Sexiest
you
looking
couldn't-
car ever
You couldn't
built,
see
though.
nothing. I mean, you bent
Yeah.
down like this, and it had a radiator the size of a heater core. And Steve Long was building my
Yeah.
radiators up in Indianapolis. He built Jeff Gordon's sprint car stuff, and we were, oh gosh, it was.
This is
Well, stop putting in big blocks and everything, and
Well,
it'll be fine.
Angelo Jimbatroni,
Hell yeah.
Angelo
Yeah.
he was Ford Racing. We were sitting at the 50th at the Cow Palace, and I just done this. I just had this drawing in this coupe that I wanted to do, and Angelo was sitting there, and he said, "You put a five." They just come out the 514s. He said, "Put a 514 in it, and I'll give you a 514." Well, Brennan was sitting beside him, and he said, "If you'll put the 514 in it, I'll give you the cover of the magazine." And I said, "Oh gosh, it won't go in it." He says, "Well, if you want this, you want that." So anyway, those cars had the original 514s in, and we debuted it at SEMA.
What'd you do? Just push it back to the firewall?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's in it.
It was in there.
That. So, and we put one of the first fast fuel injections on it. And, I don't like fuel injection, but it was right when they first come out. It's hit or miss whether it'd start or not. So Angelo, we was taking it to SEMA, and we were going to have it at the banquet, at the HRA banquet. And Gay Wilson, the guy with the purple cars, he was a buddy of mine. He hauled it out there. So, and Anna had just been born. That was in '99. She was 6 weeks old, and we had to leave her. Me and Cindy did to come out to debut this car at SEMA. And anyway, Ford was coming in. Some big wigs from Ford was coming in, so Ford wanted it in their booth. Well, you can't take a car out of there to put it back in. So Tim Fosh was about to have a fit because they had already said it was going to go there. Well, Angelo said, "Put it in the booth. I'll get it took out of the booth." Well, they said it couldn't be done. So I'm calling Angelo, and he was this little Italian guy. He was pretty cocky at the time. And I called Angelo, and I said, "Are you sure that we can get this car out of the booth?" He said, "Boy, did I not tell you it'd get out of the booth?" And I said, "Yeah, you did." He said, "Well, just forget about it. It'll get out of the booth." Well, the street rodder guys were all standing around the car about the time it was supposed to move, and there was about 5 or 6 union guys came up and said, They said, "Is this the car that needs to be moved?" And I said, "Yes, it was." So we drove it around there and put it behind the curtains at the stage. Well, then I'm up on stage, and they're fixing to do this, and they were going to debut it out. Well, you all build cars, so you know this. It got real quiet,
Yeah.
and Gay was supposed to drive it out, and I'm hearing it go, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," and it's just cranked and
everybody's
cranked
looking.
and cranked.
Everybody
and
was
finally
looking.
it started, and it moved out, and it was a big deal. But and then they came back. That same crew came back and put it back in. I asked Angelo. I said, "How did that happen?" He said, "It'll never happen again." He said, "I pulled every string that I could get." But I tell you, you remember Jackie Blackie Gigiani or
Yeah.
Gigini? Now this is how you're impressionable. And, of course, I was 45 years old at the time, and he came up to me right after that banquet, right by the car, and he said, "Hoss, I'm very impressed on what you do. And man, you talk about making
cool.
oh gosh, it made your day for somebody like that to say." So, and he was, you just look up to people like that. You really do. So, you try to pattern yourself after somebody like
Yeah.
that you give the people compliments that they need.
Is his show still going?
I don't know if it is or not.
That was
I don't know if
Oklahoma,
it is
wasn't
or not. He was always a dude. He taught Cindy how to play craps
Yeah.
at at Vegas one night. She was over at a craps table with Blackie, and I was across the other room, and she come screaming over there. She said, "You got to come over here. You got to come over here." And I said, "What for?" She said, "Just come." So she's over there, and Blackie had been at the table for 2 days. He had his shoes off, and he'd eat there and everything. There was a young girl standing beside an older gentleman that was dressed to the hilt, and I'll never forget her name. Her name was Brenda, and she had some parts that would look real great on a hot rod, that was handmade and
Aftermarket.
stuff like that.
Aftermarket,
Yeah.
some
Yeah, she
bolt-ons.
did. And she would take these dice and she'd raise her blouse up and she'd rub the dice for this old man and she'd throw them on the table. Well, she got a little excited, I guess, so she started, instead of raising them up, she started pulling them up and throwing them on the table. My wife, bless her heart, she came to get me so I could see the show. and that's what kind of girl I married, So, and I thought, man, this is great. And we're sitting here, and the whole crowd was watching. About that time, the pit boss came up. No, it was an older lady that was dressed to the hilt came up, and she grabbed the little guy, that was the older guy that was standing there with Brenda by the ear. And that was her husband.
Oh.
And Brenda was just she was
Yeah.
one of the ladies of the evening, I guess.
Yeah, we all got a
And
job.
Brenda got
do.
escorted out of the whole deal. But Blackie would always say that when we'd see him at SEMA, he'd always say, "Man, Hoss, do you remember Brenda?" And I said, "Yeah, I do remember Brenda." But, you see, and that's something that I'm fortunate that you got to intertwine with people like that you always remember. This year we were sitting at the table at the Hall of Fame deal, and Gene Winfield came by the table, and that's the last time that he was at anywhere. He passed away last week, but we're losing a lot of people like that. My list at the Triple Crown behind is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I said, I might have told you guys last year, I had 3 guys sitting there, and if you look behind them, their dad's name was on the banner.
Wow.
And I thought I wanted to do that especially because we need to recognize those people like that, because it wasn't for people like your dad and Boyd and Pete and all of those guys, we wouldn't be sitting here doing this, I don't think. So you don't forget it. You don't forget it. So,
We just got
Luke Del Rey was there sitting there, and Marcel's name was back there, so. And we're going to have a bigger list this year. Winfield, I told Case, I said, well, I got to make another one, and because of Winfield. But last year I waited till just the last minute, and
in case,
made one.
Yeah.
And then Alex died.
Yeah.
The week of the show, so I had to have another one made. So you just don't never know. But we're losing them right and left, guys.
Yeah,
I'm next. I told Case we're going to put it up there. Coming soon, coming soon.
Josh is coming soon. Yeah, I think so. It's any day now, Ed. It's any
Just
day.
TBD.
Yeah.
Ring
we just
brothers,
gotta hope-
wheel them up there.
We just got to hope that some young guys start filling those.
Well,
holes.
you're
I think
exactly right. We
I
need
think
to.
I think we're good. I felt differently 5-6 years ago. But
yeah,
man,
it's been a big resurgence.
the last few years, the amount of talent, the attitude, like it's just.
Well, the
I don't know.
talent is
The
fabulous.
talent's amazing,
Yeah.
but the guy, I just think that, and like you said, maybe it's just how we have to do, what we get to see on the podcast and interactions there. But man, it's like
What I wish
they're
they'd do,
coming out with the
Josh,
right
is do
attitudes.
what we did back in the day. Everybody get along with everybody, and everybody be friends. Because if they understood how Jack could help Joe or who, don't be in competition with each other. I always use people like Troy not as a competition, but as
Resource.
as something to look to this is a great idea that he's got.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think SEMA, good guys. There's a lot of people that are kind of trying to foster that growth with the young guns and the
yeah,
younger guys. It's helping
they are.
that grow. So I think giving them a
Exactly.
stage will go a long way. We've had a couple of them on the podcast, and we probably could do more. I think everyone in the industry probably could do more
Right.
to help,
you could.
help
You
that
know what
growth.
I thought was interesting, and it honestly wasn't like that reassuring. When we had we did this Young Guns podcast. We had all the young guns from the SEMA Battle of the Builders young guns
The top
on there.
3 winners.
And we're talking to them. A lot of talented kids, and they're all kind of doing their own thing. But what I found was interesting was when we asked them, like, what was your inspiration? What did you see? What builders? What car? What got you like motivated in the industry to do this? And not one of them had like the car, the builder, or the thing. They just kind of like somehow fell into it, and this is what they're doing. Whereas I feel like all of us
We're inspired by other people,
there was something
builders,
that inspired
cars.
you, that motivated you.
Even
that,
if you want to do your own thing,
that
you're still
drove
inspired.
you. And it just, I don't know that you're getting that with these younger guys.
Well, I got in trouble last year or year before last at SEMA at the builders panel because I came across like that there wasn't any money in it, that there wasn't. I mean that I was broke. I was just, but it wasn't that. I just said if you're in it just to make a living, you're in it for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
You are, because
Yeah, you didn't say you can't make a living in it.
I've done well. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
said
rich, but
that's not what you did. That's not what you started out to do.
No, it wasn't. But I did it because I loved it. And if you're doing it just for the money, you need to do what your customer's doing, because he's the one paying you.
You're right.
But if you're doing it for just the money, you're doing it for the wrong reason, and you're not treating it. That's not doing your customer right either, because you've got to. These cars that I do, I'm part of these cars. These cars are mine till you get them, you know. And I keep a car for a year. We take it to shows. We
Right.
do this, because building a car is very easy. Finishing a car is hard, really, really, really hard.
It certainly is.
Yeah, because you take them, you let them drive them, you do them here, and try to get the bugs worked out of them before they go home.
That last 2% is
Might as well be
That's
200%.
what you look for when you're judging these cars, or picking these cars, should I say, is are they finished? Are they finished? You know, I took a Porsche to the Roadster show that I was lucky it made it in the building. It wasn't finished by no means. It was built, but it was nowhere near finished.
Right.
But
standard questions. I'm looking forward to some of these.
You
We're gonna
got
get
something teed up.
We're gonna get the easy ones out of the way
Okay.
first, right? First,
Yeah.
I probably could guess this one, but favorite car movie?
favorite car movie. Does it have to be a car movie?
No.
You know, when you said that, the first thing that come to my mind was Vanishing Point.
Wow. Wasn't expecting that.
You know why? That Challenger. I watched that white Challenger go through the sunset, and I love a Challenger. I watched it, but I've never watched California Kid. I've never watched it.
Really?
No. Now I like Bullet, but
Yeah.
When you're watching Vanishing Point.
But when you said that I don't know what brought that to my mind, but I was thinking of that Challenger, and I could see that Challenger. Did you ever seen the
Oh
movie?
yeah.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
When you were watching that movie the whole time, were you just looking at the car thinking about how much cooler it would have been black?
Yeah, well, probably.
Because it
I
kinda
was
looked
thinking, Lord, this car's going to tear up. Don't
Looked like
tear
a
this
rental
Challenger
car. You know?
up.
It was a base model.
What car? What did you think it'd be?
I was thinking early hot rod movie. I really was.
The Kid or something like
Yeah,
that?
I was thinking, American Graffiti. I was thinking,
American
Well,
something-
American Graffiti's cool, but
Yeah.
that was.
I like
I don't know
American
why I thought of
Graffiti
that, but-
for the dialogue more so than even the car stuff. I just
Well, it's-
love the.
It's actually like a watchable movie.
It
too.
is.
Like Vanishing Point's a cool movie, but
It's
you know,
horrible if
How
you're not
often
into
you gonna
cars.
watch it, right?
But I don't know why you said it. But I helped Ray Everham asked me to help get the '58 redone that was in American Graffiti, and I helped him
That's cool.
get Steve Holcomb. We brought it over there and redid
wow.
the interior, took the original
Little tuck
interior
and roll,
and just repaired the old interior. So but
Ray's got that car now.
he had it.
That's,
had it. Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Best piece of advice you've ever received.
Guy by the name in Georgia at a Chattanooga car show. I was cocky, good Lord. I was in my teens, and I wanted to beat this guy so bad. His name was Bob Wigginton. And he built some bad boy cars, and I wanted to beat him so bad, and I beat him at that show. And he met me in the aisle coming back and busted my bubble. He congratulated me for winning, and he told me, he said, now, you started winning a little bit. He said, never forget that people know you, that you don't know them. And if somebody looks at you, you make sure you speak to them, because if you don't, they're going to think you stuck up, whether you know them or not. He said, because they'll know you.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good.
And you know how I was, oh Lord, I was so glad to beat him, but he took all the wind out of my sail by coming up to me and thanking me for doing it, and it was a great car.
He knew what he was doing. He
He did.
He won then.
He won. But you remember that, but you do.
Yeah.
People will know you because you're out here and you're in it. Not that you're somebody or whatever, but acknowledge that they're there and just speak to them. And it costs nothing to do that.
Right.
Sure.
That's good. You want to go car or you want to go law enforcement?
Ooh, I mean, we can go to the car, but that's tough. It's a different generation.
It'd have been a tractor.
Yeah,
if you're
it's
going to
different. We do first. We always guess what everybody's first car was, but I mean, your first
Might
car,
have been a buggy.
Yeah,
Or a wagon.
because you probably, I mean, you'd have been driving 16 in like the 60s, late 60s, early 70s.
No, 70s. I graduated in 73.
Did
Okay.
you? All right. Did you buy your first car yourself?
Yes.
All right.
Off the lot.
No, I didn't build it, but I bought it.
You
But
bought
I
it.
never built it, but I
73.
bought it.
That's a tough era for 73. But you would have gotten your,
You would have gotten no way you could.
you would have
guess
gotten
it.
your license in like 70. Then
Yeah, well, it was in Tennessee. We had our license when we were 10.
okay.
Had to be a pickup. I'm going pickup truck. I'm going Ford pickup truck. You going Mustang?
No.
It's a Ford. I know it was a Ford. Had to be a Ford.
Like,
Are
I don't
I'd
we
be
know.
wrong
talking
if it's not a Ford.
bought car or built?
No,
Or built?
bought.
car.
Bought. To
To
drive.
transportation.
To drive.
You were
To
16.
drive. Yeah,
To drive.
16.
To
First,
drive.
first mode of transportation.
Okay. First one I drove.
Yeah.
Okay. You're way off.
Dude, I'm honestly thinking, no disrespect, but it's.
Oh, wow.
You said it. It's a tractor, dude. It, big ass back tires, tiny little front tires. That thing had all the rake in the world. And
you saying that's the inspiration?
yeah, and
the
from
rake
then on,
from the
yeah,
tractor.
you probably lived close to school.
We were at Reno one year, and Bigfoot got unloaded, and Bob Johnson, they bring it with these little bitty tires and wheels on it.
Yeah.
They put the big back wheels on it, and it had the little front ones on it. And Bob
that what
Johnson
did it?
said, "You built that truck."
First one, what was it?
I can't. I can't even
64
guess it.
Plymouth Sport Fury 426 wedge 4-speed.
Shit.
Had the whole
426
quarter
wedge.
pound locked out of it because it got wrecked on the drag strip. My dad worked at the Chrysler Plymouth place, and I bought that thing for $1,100. I fixed a quarter on it. And he came in, we put new tires on it, and he came in, and 2 or 3 weeks later, the tires were flat on the rear, and I had burnt the tires off of it. It was a white car with blue guts, and there was a guy that he had sold a 68 Roadrunner for with a 383 Magnum in it, and the boys, it was a new car, and the boys wanted that wedge out of that car, so he said, get that motor out of that car. So he took it, they took it and put the 426 in the Roadrunner, put the 383 Magnum in the Sport Fury, and it ran better with the 383 Magnum in it than it did the wedge.
Really?
Yeah, so
A lot
now,
lighter?
huh?
A lot lighter?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's just a little bit better motor, I guess.
All right. Favorite, your most memorable law enforcement interaction story?
You wouldn't guess this either.
There's got to be some good ones because you built some wild cars.
33 5-window that I put a blower on. First blown car I had. Buddy of mine I
BDS?
went to school with. No, it's 671. It had a I forget what drive it had on it, but it wasn't BDS. It was in my mother's garage where I built the first Riddler car that I did, and we set the body on the frame. I had built all of this stuff. Man, I wanted to drive a blown car so bad. We'd start, and it was sitting there, and it had a what camshaft it had? It had a crazy camshaft in it that had a lot of overlap to it, and the blower belt would stop when it idled. It was just going boom, 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 boom. And I told Dennis Payne, he was a buddy of mine with me, and I said, we got to drive this car. We got to drive it. So we set the body on it, no doors, bolted it down. We got a seat. I sat in the seat. He had a gas can over on the edge, like an old boat gas can. We left the house in that thing, had a coat hanger driving it. And we come around the block and was fixing to cross the railroad tracks, and there was a Trans Am behind us. And Dennis was over, I said, "You ready?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm ready." I pulled the cable on that thing, and man, we lit it up through the drive. It was an unmarked police car in that Trans Am. And he stopped us, and this thing had no doors or nothing on it. And he eat our lunch. He said, "What are y'all doing?" And I tried to explain to him I had never drawn a blown car and I wanted to drive one. Well, it didn't end at that.
care.
He said, "Where do you live at?" And I said, "Right across the hill over there." And he said, "I want to see just how fast you can get this thing back in that garage, and I don't want it." Well, I thought he meant
Fast.
see it. So we got back in, and I said, "Dennis, you ready?" He said, "Yeah." I pulled it, and I was burnt the tires off of it over there. He come flying in through it with the blue lights on again.
That's not what he meant.
He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "You said you wanted to see how fast we could get it back." But no, that was not what he meant.
Oh, shit.
That was awesome.
Did the car ever get finished, or did it get
Yeah,
impounded?
it got finished. It was the one that Pete and them. It was that car. It was
okay.
that car. It was that car. It
Or
was
what?
an old race car. It was number 78.
That's
And
cool.
I paid $750 for it. And that's how I learned how to do power windows, power seats, power cowl vents, power all of that, because they'd gutted everything, and you couldn't buy repo parts back then. So I bought an old 60-something Thunderbird that had a convertible car that had a power seat and had a power vent windows in it. So I used that for a power cowl vent, and I put the motors in it. It had a 6-way power seat, and I cut it down and put it in there, and had the hydraulic rounds for the top. I made it for the trunk, so it raised the trunk, because we had it anyway. You just made
Show
whatever.
car.
Yeah, show car.
That is badass, man.
Bobby, it's been amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
Be a
been
fun
great,
night.
buddy.
It's been a while.
Where's what's the dates on Triple Crown?
September the 5th and 6th.
September 5th and
Always
6th.
the weekend after Labor Day.
Always weekend after Labor
Yeah,
Day.
that's a show you can't miss, man. And
Well, thank you so much.
Before we let you go, Bobby, I just gotta thank you, because seeing what you did and how you showed up to these shows, and we talked about Indy, and to kind of wrap this all up, I think I was probably 19 or 20 years old, and I experienced that, you coming into Indy. And for me, the hot rod memory of what made you want to do this shit, what made me want to do this shit, it's that. Was seeing you come in, the way you presented yourself, the cars you built, and that you sold me on how badass this industry was, and that hung with me forever. It wasn't the California guys. It was
Jeremy, this industry is great. The people in this industry are wonderful. They're great friends, and that's what all the young guys need to know, that this is a family.
Yeah.
It really is, and everybody will help you if you'll ask.
Absolutely.
We
Every one
spent
of
our
them will.
entire careers just trying to be cool like Bobby. I think that's my next tattoo.
Cool.
Trying to be
Dude,
cool
you're
like Bobby.
Hey, listen, you're the Johnny
gotta
Cash of
keep
the hot
trying.
rod
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
There's no
Well,
question
thank
about
you,
it.
thank
So
you.
Man in Black. I mean, it works.
Yeah, it's perfect, man. We appreciate it.
And I
So-
married a trashy woman, which was just wonderful.
Hey, it's,
You knew, Josh, I said that I ever told you about our wedding deal. I'd never been to a wedding except the one that we got married to, and everybody did all of this stuff at weddings, and they did all of this kneel and stuff like that. I told Cindy, I said, I'm not doing none of that. I am not doing none of that. But the song "I Like My Women a Little on the Trashy Side" by Confederate Railroad was just out. But I said, I'll tell you what, if you'll play that song instead of the wedding march, I'll do whatever you want to. Well, at the rehearsal, they played "I Like My Women a Little on the Trashy Side," and I said, you had to marry her then. You couldn't. But anyway,
that's a good song.
it is.
Hell yeah.
All right, we'll see you again
thanks,
next
Bobby.
week.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Bobby.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you.
Thank you, guys.